Shabbat Shalom to everybody. Good morning. This is Bill Bullock, and I'm coming to you once again live from the Biblical Lifestyle Center in Texarkana, USA. Good morning to you. Good Sabbath. I hope you will grab a cup of coffee, a cup of tea, a glass of lemonade or kombucha or whatever it is you like to drink to get yourself comfortable because we have a few moments to talk on this beautiful Sabbath. We have something to share with one another. The blessedness and the holiness of the seventh day is upon us, and the Creator of the universe is very, very close to us. And He's calling us to gather, to assemble to Him, not to ourselves, not to our little meetings, although He'll allow that to take place and rejoice in our presence there. But what He's calling us to do is assemble before Him. And as one by one across the nations, across the world, we respond to that call. We seek His words, we seek His face, we seek His presence. And we do this every Sabbath. Every Sabbath, He finds a way to speak to the deepest levels of our hearts and our minds, to awaken things that have been long dormant within our souls and within our bodies, and to awaken us, to call us into the role He designed us to play before the foundation of the world. We are His people. He is our God, and we join commune together on this, the seventh day. So, if you've got yourself comfortable, you've got hopefully a good chair, maybe a recliner you can sit back in and just enjoy. Thank you for inviting me to come spend some of this time, this precious time, earth time, with you. Now let us get into our studies for the day. We're doing a series on the Torah, the annual cycle of the Torah studies. This year's series is entitled Walking in the Light. Walking in the light, discovering the hidden wisdoms encoded within Torah's timeless stories. We're taking the perspective of looking at the Torah not as a set of laws, not as a set of moral code, not as a set of even history narratives, but a series of stories through which a wise, benevolent master rabbi is teaching us how to live life well, how to live life to its fullest, and how to live life in such a way that leaves a legacy of life, health, and peace, shalom, and tikva, hope, and simcha, joy, and emunah, faith, behind us for the next generations to come. Welcome, welcome. Let's enjoy our time together today. Good Sabbath to you. All right, so let's talk about our parsha. It's Vayechi. This is the final parsha of the first book of Torah, which is Genesis in the Western world. The King James authors had tended to call it that by that Latin name. But the real name of the book is Bereshit. Begins from the very first words of the book, Bereshit bara Elohim et Hashmayim et Haaretz. And so this idea of the Creator's engagement with the world is what Bereshit is all about. How does the Creator of the universe engage with the cosmos? And how does He engage with individual people? We've been learning that through the stories of the patriarch. And so we call what we've been involved in the past few weeks our studies in the patriarchal era. This is foundational as far as how the Creator of the universe relates not only to His creation and to the ecosystem He designed for us to manage, but also to us, His ecosystem managers. What does He expect of us? What is He calling forth from us? How is He designing His ecosystem and His relationships with mankind to bring the ecosystem into its fullness, bring the ecosystem to the greatest plan, which is to restore it to Edenic beauty, fruitfulness, shalom, and harmonious interaction, and the process of redeeming mankind as a species, bloodline by bloodline, household by household, family by family, as many as will come to the sound of His voice and to the light of His presence. Shabbat Shalom for Parsha Vayechi. It is found in your Bibles at Genesis chapter 47, verse 28 through Genesis 50, verse 21. And Genesis 50, verse 21 is the last verse of the book of Genesis. So we will conclude this series of stories and move into the next. So we're going to be trying to discover some secret wisdom that the Creator of the universe has encoded in the timeless stories that are contained within Parsha Vayechi, this chapters 47 through 50 of Genesis. This is Torah's segue, his way of introducing the next book of Torah by concluding this previous book of Torah. All of Torah's books build upon each other. There's a strong foundation laid for what's going to happen in the next book. So this Parsha, the Parsha Vayaki, is indeed Torah's segue into the next book of Torah. The King James writers designed to call it by the Latin name Exodus, but the Hebrew words or Sefer Shemot, the book of names, the book of identities, the book of personalities, the book of persons and missions and destinies. Sefer Shemot. That's where we're going next. But we're not there yet. We have to have a segue into that beautiful set of stories. The greatest redemption story, the greatest deliverance story ever told, the greatest visitation of the Creator of the universe upon the earth in a mass form, both at Sinai. First at Sinai at the giving of the Torah, and then in the dedication of the Mishkan, the great tabernacle. These are the greatest deliverance stories and the greatest visitation stories found in the Torah. We will see them take place next week, beginning next week. But still, this is this Parsha of Vayaki in Book of Genesis still. And he's preparing, that is the Creator, is preparing us to transition our focus from the personal, individualized relationships that the Creator wants to have with human beings. And he's demonstrated through discussions with Avram, with Yitzhak, with Yaakov. And for the English speakers that don't follow the traditional Hebrew, that's Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob. You know them by name, by those names. So the Torah, the writer of Torah, the storyteller, is preparing to transition our focus. And the focus of his stories is master rabbi stories of how to live life, from discussing our personal, individualized relationships with the Creator and our family relationships and our families and bloodlines, to a larger picture, a more macro picture than the micro of our homes and families and individual hearts. He's going to broaden the picture of the next book of Torah, in book of Exodus or Sefer Shemot. He's going to focus our attention somewhere bigger than just our individual relationships and our families, our households. He's going to focus on our nation, the great nation that he promised to Avram will indeed begin to come forth in the next book of Torah. We have to prepare for that. This is in the segue of the Parsha of Vayaki. The national identity will be forged. Our national destiny will be laid out. Our national mission will be discussed and called for. And our interactions with the raging nations and our rules of engagement with the raging nations that we will encounter will be discussed in great detail, beginning in Sefer Shemot. We have to prepare for that, because what we've been doing is not going to be enough to cover that. I call this section, Parsha Vayaki, the Great Deployment. The Great Deployment. We are sent on a mission. We're not just happenstance, born wherever we're born, into whatever family or bloodline or ethnicity we're born. We're sent. We're deployed. And so we're going to talk about in Parsha Vayaki and the weeks beyond the great deployment of individual eternal souls into the earthly realm and its fleshly peoples and nations and economies and the climatological issues that we deal with and the catastrophic human errors that are made. We're the great deployment. We're here to bring a counterbalance to the world, hope to the world. We're here to bring shalom to the world. We're here to bring joy to the world, but in the process, we're also here to bring about a shaking in the world as far as its perversions and as far as its calamitous activities and its debauchery and its narcissism and its nations. We're here to see the raging nations be calmed like a lion tamer tames a lion. So here we are, the Great Deployment. The Great Deployment, what does it mean? The Great Deployment is a series of 12 families of the covenant. The 12 families, they're the 12 tribes as we think of them, but they're families. And so as they grow larger and become macroed and become bigger and they actually become tribes, it's still just 12 families. 12 families of the covenant strategically deployed in various different locations. 12 families of the covenant deployed among the nations. 12 families of the covenant deployed among the peoples of the earth. among the raging nations, among the peoples that imagine vain things, among the governments and the cabals and the cartels, and all that were great 12 families deployed in the Great Deployment. So we're learning about the 12 families. We'll begin to focus more on tribes, and it's not tribes from the standpoint of one superior to another. It's the idea of each one has its own role to play in the upheaval and in the redemption that is coming. The 12 families of the covenant and the part they play in the trial of the raging nations. That's what we're going to talk about. This is the series of time we're talking about the Great Deployment. So last week we had a discussion, and I would encourage you, if you have a few moments this Sabbath, please go back and review the online live teaching that we did on Parsha Vayigash. That lays the foundation for this season we're in of the Great Deployment. Last week we asked the question. We said Egypt, as the 70 souls of descended from Avram, Yitzhak, and Yaakov began to make their migration down from Hebron and the land of the patriarchs to Memphis or Thebes or Egypt and the land of Goshen in the Egyptian realm. As we begin to see this transition take place and the relocation take place, I asked the question, I said, ready or not? Or I said, ready or not, Egypt, here we come. Well, this week, this emphasis changes just slightly, and the storyline is, ready or not, Egypt, here we are. What are you going to do with us? How are you going to behave toward us? How are you going to treat us? How are you going to work with us? What rules of engagement will you have with us? How will you deal with the people, the visitors that have come from the land of the patriarchs? So here we are, 12 families. 12 families sent on a mission, a deployment into, in this case, the Western tower of peoples, the Western superpower of the world. Then it was Egypt. It could be America. But whatever the Western power of the world is at a given time, 12 families have been sent to be deployed among those. So these 12 families, though they are, and individually and collectively, they are far from perfect. And you will see that portrayed in the late blessing that Yaakov is going to pronounce there. These are not equal and they're not perfect, these 12 families. But there's the one thing they have in common, or need to have in common. They fear the Holy One. They revere his name, and they are covenant called and covenant bound, and they are aware of the fact that they're covenant called and covenant bound to walk before the Creator of the universe, conscious of his presence at all times, aware of who he is and why he's called them, and to be blameless as they walk before him and be blameless and do and speak according to his will, not their own. This is the consciousness that we share. Even though we're far from perfect, and some families seem to be more attuned than others, our common calling is to walk before the Creator of the universe, conscious of his presence and his leading at all times, and being accountable to him at all times, to be blameless, to do and speak his will, not our own. This is a common thing. And the second thing is that we all have in common the calling and mission to teach our children and our household following us, those who will listen to us, those who will be drawn to us by the Creator, to walk in the way of his ways of the Creator, to build, to make, to shape, to form tzedakah, which the world calls righteousness, but which we call merely that which can be built upon and build a good life, and mishpat, which the world calls judgment or justice, but which we call that which is the actual design and plan and strategy of the Holy One to fix the world. So here are these 12 families with this common calling, these two common callings particularly, being deployed among the raging nations. And the raging nation that the Holy One has chosen to tell these stories about our deployment is Egypt, is Mitzrayim, a nation and a government and a milieu and a people that promote every form of Ra, which King James Version chose to translate as evil, Shakat, which the King James Version of the Bible chose to translate, you may be familiar with, as corruption. Hamas, which the King James Version chose to translate into English as violence. Ra, Shakat, and Hamas, evil, corruption, and violence. the nation of Egypt, the Western culture, the Western tower of human civilization always promotes Ra, Shakat, and Hamas in every form. But that's not all. They also promote Hevel, vanity. Those things are not important. They're coming and going in a wisp, but they seem to be so important at the moment. The Hevel, the Ivelet, the folly, the idea of that which never is going to go anywhere. It's going to go around in a circle and never accomplish anything and just frustrate the people involved. So the Western culture, the evil tower of the West, Mitzrayim in our story, but could be the United States or the Western world in general, Western mindset in general, the Hevel, Evelet, and Avon, which is divergence from the plan of the Holy One. The Western world, the Western culture, the raging nations that we're deployed in have a milieu, a government and a nation and an ethnicity and a people that favor every form of Hevel, of vanity, of every form of Evelet, of folly, and of every form of Avon, which is divergence from the will, deviance, so to speak. Oh, but that's not all. The third phase of this whole darkness that we're deployed in, of the raging nations, is whole. English calls it profane or common. The focus of the Western world is on that which is profane, that which is coal. The focus, but it's not all. Coal and tuma. Tuma is called, I think the King James Version calls it uncleanness. The idea is that which fragments the spirit and the soul and separates it from its own essence and helps it to cause it to dissolve and become like deteriorating in death. Tuma. And then the coal and the tuma combine the Western world with toeba, which is abomination. The Western world, the Western powers, the Western-minded ethnicities, and the peoples that imagine vain things of the West, they are obsessed with abominations, and things that are abominations they love, even from the eating of the flesh of the swine, with so many more things, the giving of their children to gods of the world, gods of the dark ages of the world. This is the Toeba realm and the Western world. We are deployed amongst a people and a nation and a milieu that promotes every form of all these things I have referenced. Ra, Shakat, Hamas, Hevel, Evelet, Avon, Chol, Tuma, and Toeba. Woo! Ready or not, Egypt, here we are. Ready or not, Bnei Israel, sons of the covenant and daughters of the covenant, children of the covenant, here we are. We're on the stage. The spotlight's on. The cue has been given. The music is playing. Let's dance. What are the challenges we face? Well, overall, in general, the challenges the world faces, and that we therefore, as part of the world, face, is that all creation is groaning under the oppressive weight of Ra, Shakat, Hamas, Hevel, Ivelet, and Avon, Tuma, and Kol. These things are weighty and weighing on the creation, and all of creation, including the lands we have come from in Hebron and the land of Egypt, are groaning under this eager expectation that someone's going to come forth and deliver them, that there's going to be the great deliverance that takes place. But in the meantime, there's suffering and there's groaning and moaning, and there's forest fires and wildfires in the cities, and there's terror attacks here, and there's terror attacks there, particularly in the most vulnerable of places, which are the most perverse of the places. You've seen it happen in the last few weeks, and it will happen again in the next 2 weeks. So all creation is groaning under the oppressive uncleanness and profanity of the Ra, Shakat, and Hamas evil, corruption, and violence of the world. The second general challenge we face is that all of humanity's ethnicities, all of its people groups, all of its cultures, all of its bloodlines have been horribly corrupted and are in the process of deterioration, collapse. Though some may look healthier than others, and some may promote themselves as being more moral or righteous than others, they're all have sinned and come short of the glory of the Holy One, says what said one writer in the New Testament. And it's so real. There is none righteous, no, not one. None of these ethnicities or groups or cultures, ideologies, or any divisions of humankind is any better than any of the others. We're all equally corrupt and destroyed, the world's nations. That's why we're deployed here. And we aren't perfect either. So the third of the challenges we face is that every single one of man's institutions, every single one of man's governments, every single one of man's institutionalized or formal religions, and every convention that man has ever created is founded on lies. Every single one. Western, Eastern, Middle Eastern, every single institution, government, religion, and convention is founded on lies, and it promotes propaganda, and it produces only futility. That's the challenge we face. Wow, this isn't the end of the story. This is where we get busy. We roll up our sleeves and get busy and do what we're assigned to do in our deployment. But that's not all the challenges we face. The fourth challenge is that uncleanness and vile passions and darkened understanding and vain imaginations and a debased mind. Let me go through those again. Uncleanness is rampant. Vile passions are promoted and celebrated. Darkened understanding is the common theme that's published everywhere. Vain imaginations are published as truth and reality, and a debased mind is what you see everywhere around you. These are the norm in the societies of the earth, particularly focused now, spotlight now, on the Western superpower. That day, the stories were about Egypt. It could be easily about America or whoever else takes America's place as the head of the Western Tower of humanity's debauchery. And the fifth and final of the challenges we face in the general realm is that in the times that we have been allotted to live in, we are here for such a time as this, we can't fix everything. As a matter of fact, we can't really fix anything. We're not here to fix it, although that is sort of the way the Holy One wants to use us to do this. He wants to let Messiah lead us into a place of gradually healing the broken places and awakening the hope and returning everyone back to Him. And what we're to bring into the world, what the purpose of our deployment in these places and times is that we are to bring a contagion of holiness, Kedusha, as it's called in the Hebrew. We're to bring a contagion of this Kedusha, holiness, this energy of heaven into the places, into the situations, into the nations, into the ethnicities, into the bloodlines that we encounter, as much as we can. Let's talk a little bit more before we get too deep into our parsha this week about the prophetic implications of Mitzrayim in particular. This is the elder brother of the West, as we've already talked about last week. The elder brother of the East is Babylon. And if you reference the wicked witch of the West and the wicked witch of the East conference, or confirmation, that's what I'm really talking about here. It's the whole story of the Wizard of Oz is the story of the Torah. Instead, we have a wicked witch of the West, and that's Mitzrayim in this situation. And the wicked witch, or wicked brother, elder brother of Israel in the East, and that's Babel, Assyria. They have a few of them over there, Ur of the Chaldees. So there are prophetic implications of dealing with this Western brother of the West, or wicked witch of the West. What does the Mitzrayim mean? It means from narrow straits or constrictions. Narrow areas, tight areas. Mitzrayim means a place of limitations and restrictions on movement, on freedom, on thought. A place where one is hedged in at all times, controlled, manipulated from above, and of increasing bondage that is so subtle in its approach that we don't even realize we're under that bondage until we're bound up so tightly we can't get away. Where we've embraced the Pharaoh and thought he was embracing us. We took his money. We took the government programs. We took the benefits. We took the handouts. And he says, but there's a cost that comes with that. And that cost is your freedom and your soul, if not your life and your family. Welcome to Mitzrayim. Welcome to the world in which we live. We think have a nice, comfortable life here in the West, in the Western world. And he says, but I'm demanding more than you know and taking more than you can possibly wish to give. We are in a chamber of compression. And it's so gently adding the compression and the weight every day that we don't even recognize it. So what does this mean? What are the levels of this compression? What are the levels of the limitation? What is the Mitzrayim aspect of it? Well, it starts with financial and social constraints. mandated submission to folly, to nonsense in the name of science, or in the name of government, or in the name of the common good as they define it. And social justice as they define it, financial and social constraints with enforcement methodologies. And then there's health-related restrictions and limitations. They will limit what you can do to help other people or to help yourselves, or to take the things that the Creator has given to you that are healthy and actually employ them. Even the milk of the goat or the cow will be restricted and limited. And everything that could possibly be beneficial, the herbs, the things that were put in the earth, the leaves, the earth, the herbs, the different things that are given to us to heal, and they will be regulated to a max. So yes, this is the Mitzrayim connection. And then there's the psychological burdens we're put under, the stresses that we're called, and the anxieties we're called to bear. And then we willingly accept the dreams, the ideals that we're supposed to live up to, the commandments, the order, the performance standards, the ideals of athletics and the ideals of entertainment world and beauty. These things are psychological burdens placed upon us, and the burdens of religion, the burdens of we have to do these certain sacraments, we have to do these certain gifts and giving. This is the forms of the psychological burdens that are placed upon you. Guilt over social injustice, that's another one. Over whiteness and blackness and brownness and yellowness and redness, and over all these things, psychological burdens are placed upon us, and it becomes a Mitzrayim, an oppression. System-wide, institutionally based, manipulation and oppression and repression of thought. We can't even think the things that we can't think for ourselves anymore. We're pre-programmed by doctrines, and pre-programmed by dogma, and pre-programmed by bullet points of politics and ideology, and bullet points of, quote, science, pseudoscience, that they make up and call science. We are oppressed, depressed with thought. And then we can't speak. What we can say is limited by virtue of what some call political correctness and others just call this hate speech. It's called hate speech if they hate it. That's the way this works. And they hate what they can't control. And so our thoughts are controlled. Our speech is controlled. Our worldview is controlled. We're given limitations on what we can believe about the world. We can't see the other realm because no one won't let us talk about the other realm, the kingdom of heaven realm, the heavens, the Hashemayim realm, and how it overlaps and actually is supposed to align with the earthly realm. We're not allowed to talk about that. Just whatever feels good, do it. And whatever is socially acceptable, do it. And finally, our behavior is also controlled, and our travel is hold as well. We'll see that begin to happen, as we're not even allowed to go without an Egyptian escort to bury Yaakov, our patriarch. That's one of the aspects of what happens this week. So what is Mitzrayim? How is the specifics of Mitzrayim working? Well, it's ruled by an all-powerful, feared, revered ruler or cabal. It wasn't just Pharaoh, you see. It's never just the Pharaoh. He's the face. He's the talking head. He's the ultimate power that seems to reside in him. But it really comes from a cabal. It really comes from cohorts. It really comes from this court. So they're fated, we're ruled. One thing is about Mitzrayim, it's ruled an unseen group of people, a shadow government, as it was, a shadow power that's ruling the whole nation. The second thing about Egypt, Mitzrayim, was the focus was always on the material and the physical. It was pyramidal. It had a pyramidal legacy. The idea is, don't worry about eternal spiritual things. We're about the physical earth, and we're about the things and the pleasures in the earth. You want to take those pleasures with you into the afterworld. And the whole outlook of life in ancient Mitzrayim was pagan from the beginning to the end. All flesh, all pseudo-intellect, all superstition, all control and manipulation. It's a cult. And occult. And fourth thing is that the Western Mitzrayim nation had a calendar contrary to the Creator's times and seasons. None of the creator's times and seasons played a role at all in the calendar of the ancient Mitzrayim. And so it is always going to be with the Western, and probably also with the Eastern older brother towers of humanity that we are called to interact with and navigate the realms between. The calendar. What's the calendar? That's another issue. Fifth issue of Mitzrayim, characteristic of Mitzrayim, is obsessed with what they call nature. There is no such thing as nature. It's creation. The creator of the universe has design there. So what's even getting caught with the language of talking about nature or mother nature or natural science or all the things where the word nature is thrown in there? Understand you're being pre-programmed. You're spouting. You're parroting the Mitzrayim mindset. It's not nature. It's not natural science. It's not Mother Nature. The creator of the universe has got a plan, and he has been interacting with it. His creation, his ecosystem. That's what you think of as nature. The sixth element of historic Mitzrayim that we have to deal with in this great deployment is perverse, self-centered practices of sensuality and sexuality. Okay, I'm not going to go any further on that one. It doesn't take a rocket scientist for you to figure out that the Western culture, particularly Mitzrayim, had a perverse, self-centered idea, practice of sexuality and sensuality. Just look at what happened with Potiphar's wife, and you'll get an understanding. The seventh facet of the Mitzrayim status, what's in Mitzrayim, what Mitzrayim consists of, what are we deployed in, is fascination with and fixation on death. They talk about bucket lists. They talk about things of what I want to do before I die. They think about what places I want to go, things I want to see, and people I want to know before I die. This is the facet of the Western Mitzrayim culture. The eighth thing is state-controlled propaganda outlets. They call them information sources, but they're institutional propaganda forces. And so media, the institutional, the government controls everything you hear, think, and speak. The images you see, the icons, the symbols are put out there to frighten you and to make you feel comfortable that you belong here. Priesthood versus laity distinctions are laid out where you are not supposed to know everything. Other people are the experts and they know all these things, and they have these consultants come in to tell you all the stories. Then you can't figure it out for yourself. You need somebody else to do it for you. There's hype and fluff and hyperbole and insistence on cultic sameness, one phase to another. Then the ninth thing is obsession with occult arts, superstitions, horoscopes, witches and spells, and this author who writes about witches and warlocks, and this writer who writes stories about vampires and werewolves. You see where all this goes. Focus on the occult, focus on the supernatural as opposed to the spiritual. And see, if you understand you're dealing with supernatural, you're not dealing with spiritual. The 10th aspect of ancient Mitzrayim that we're deployed among, the great deployment is among, is cultural snobbery and race hatred, ethnic obsession over what color one's skin is and what pigmentation they may have and what culture they come from and who did what to who in the past and generations past. These are the things of Mitzrayim. Now, we're deployed in this. This is the realm we're to live in. We are going to spend a long time in Mitzrayim, and according to the stories that are being told in the Torah. So the master, our great rabbi, blessed be his name, Yeshua of Nazareth, he said, when you go into a household or a nation, it could be, he said, speak shalom to it. Speak your shalom to it. And if the household is worthy, let your shalom come and rest upon that house or that nation. But if it is not worthy, if the nation or the house is not worthy, let your shalom return to you. Always keep your shalom. Hold on to your shalom. Make sure your shalom does not depart from you. Oh, don't let your shalom go, beloved. That's part of our deployment strategy. And whoever will not receive you, the Messiah said, nor shema your words, and to get in tune with and reverberate with and resonate with your words and your teachings, when you depart from that house or city or nation, shake off the dust from your feet. Let it become an ecosystem of itself. where the sowing and reaping process can work. The dust is dirt. The dirt is blessed to produce whatever is sown into it. So that's what, when you shake off the dust from your feet, you're allowing the sowing and reaping cycle to begin. Whatever they sowed into you, they will reap to themselves. And the master continues, assuredly I say to you, it would be more tolerable for the land of Sodom and Gomorrah in the day of judgment than for that city that you'd shake off the dust from your feet against. Because you see, when men are left to their own devices, and they do what they do without any counterbalance from the Creator's covenant people, when that happens, everything devolves into Sodom and Gomorrah. The Western nations will see cities that devolve into Sodom and Gomorrah type cities. Well, behold, the master continued, with this in mind, I send you out as sheep among wolves. So be wise as serpents, harmless as doves. These are our marching orders. These are our rules of engagement in general form, which we will get more in specific form. But he said, behold, I send you out. Our deployment will be as sheep among wolves. The great deployment will be as sheep among wolves. So we must be as wise as serpents, as harmless as doves. Sheep among wolves, wise as serpents. What an interesting simile. Harmless as doves, another interesting simile. Sheep among wolves, wise as serpents, harmless as doves. But what do those similes look like? How does this rules of engagement act and operate in real time, in real life, in a real world, among real perverse people obsessed with Ra, Shakat, Hamas, Hevel, Ivelet, Evan, Tuma, Hol, and Toebah? How do we do this sheep among wolves thing? How do we do this wise as serpents thing? How do we do this harmless as doves? How do we teach our children to do it generation after generation after generation? Wise as serpents, harmless as doves in the midst of wolves? How do we do that in real time, in a real world? Welcome to the great deployment. What has Bereshit, what is the book of Genesis, as the world calls it, taught us about this thing? That first of all, it taught us a two-realm worldview. We are not limited by this realm of earth. What we see on earth is not all there is. To the contrary, it is not even the biggest part of what there is. The greatest part of what there is beyond the earth, beyond this veil, in the second realm, the realm of the heavens, Et HaShamayim realm. We live on the Et Haaretz realm. And yes, to us it all looks like tohu vavohu. But the Holy One says, no, I breathe from my realm into your realm. And I breathe order into the chaos. And I breathe light into the darkness. And I breathe meaning into the meaninglessness of the hevel of this world. So, we learned in the book of Bereshit, the book of Genesis, first of all, the two-realm worldview. And that leads to other things. The second thing is we learned is whose world it is we live in. It is not nature. It is not biological development or some form of scientific growth. It is creation. It is designed. It is ordered. It is structured. The world we live in is the Holy One's world, and He is responsible for watching over it. He's given us the ability to impact it, and He's also withheld the right to fix it however He needs to fix it, and use whoever He wants to use to do that process. So whose world do we live in? The Creator's world. It is not nature. It is not some form of evolution. The second thing we learned in the book of Genesis is the purpose of man is designed to be the steward, bring forth fruitfulness and the beauty and the magnification of the plan with regard of the Creator's plan with regard to the earth ecosystem. That's why the purpose of man here is to be God's shadow upon the earth. B'Tselem Elohim, it said in Genesis 1, 18, 19. And then we're to make it fruitful. Be fruitful and make it the earth fruitful and make it expand in its fullness to where it reaches its capacity. That's the purpose of man. We know whose world we live in now and the purpose of man in it. The third thing we learned from the book of Genesis is the blessing and the holiness of the Sabbath, of the seventh day. A day when we get to experience a foretaste of the world to come, a foretaste, a reminder of the beauty of Eden. We return to Eden for 24 hours. Even though we can't return to it physically, in our minds, we train our minds to think Eden thoughts, to respond to Eden stimuli, to see Eden beauty, to call forth Eden productivity and fruitfulness. These are visions. It's visions of Eden's garden, the visions of the Kedusha down there, draft from heaven, the holiness. And he blessed the seventh day and he made it Kadosh, Kadosh, a holy one. This downdraft from heaven vision is what we must never unsee. Eden and the downdraft of heaven over it should never be unseen by our eyes. That's the third thing we learned in the book of Genesis. Fourth thing is that Ra, Shekat, and Hamas, King James Version calls it evil, corruption, and violence, threaten the entire planet and threaten the continuation of the ecosystem. And that is why we are on Earth. That's why we are deployed here, because the Earth badly needs tikkun. It needs fixing of the individual heart and soul. It needs fixing of the family. It needs fixing of the earth, the terra firma. And it needs fixing of the whole arrangement as it works together, tikkun olam. The fifth thing we've learned from the book of Genesis, beloved, as we conclude this book today, is the Raging Nations initiative is on. It began with the removal of the unifying force, which was the Hebrew language. God had spoken and continues to speak through the Hebrew language. Men had picked up this Hebrew language and they had been able to find the unifying force of it to do things that were not according to the plan of the Holy One. So they pulled the Hebrew language out at the Tower of Babel. And now we are in the Raging Nations initiative, and they have nothing to unify them, only things to divide them. And they engage the Raging Nations mindset. That's what we live in. That's the world we're deployed in. This is what we've learned from the book of Genesis. The sixth thing is that there is a counter initiative to the Raging Nations initiative. The Holy One has designed one. It's the Abrahamic Covenant initiative, the grand redemptive and restorative plan of the Creator of the universe to use a family, a group of people, an expanding family that will become a nation in the book of Exodus. This covenant nation initiative will come and be the counterbalance to the Raging Nations initiative, and implement the grand redemptive and restorative plan and reintroduce the Hebrew language to the earth. They'll be the unifying factor for the Messianic reign. The seventh of the things that Rashid, the book of Genesis, has taught us is that Eretz Yisrael is a portal between heaven and earth, the land of Israel, the land that stretches out from Beersheba and Hebron, Yerushalayim, Bet El, up to the Sea of Galilee and the Golan, and all the way to Haifa and over to Gaza and to all the areas that are known in Israel, Shechem, Nablus, all these areas that are called to be a portal where heaven can touch earth and the Kedusha can downflow, particularly centered around one pinpoint, which is Jerusalem, Yerushalayim, and particularly Temple Mount, Mount Moriah in Jerusalem. We've learned that this portal needs to be maintained and purified and cleansed and periodically re-cleansed over and over again. This is part of the calling. Never to lose focus and think we belong in these nations, in the places we're deployed. This is not our home. This is just our place of deployment and service until we're called home. And the eighth thing we've learned in the book of Genesis, the book of Bereshit, beloved, is that Messianic hope exists, and we are to carry it. We are to be the torchbearers of Messianic hope, that there is a redemption coming, and a Messiah is coming, returning to the earth, and he will come. And it has a two-appearance pattern. There was one appearance that he comes like Joseph as a suffering servant who bears the punishment and bears the approbation of the world and is not loved and not expected, received, but only by a few. And then there's the second appearance in which he comes in fullness and glory, the Davidic return appearance, the Messianic hope alive, and we're supposed to be carriers of the Messianic hope. So where are we as the Parsha begins? That's a lot that the book of Genesis has taught us, but as it ends with Parsha Vayechi, it's like the storyteller is coming to us all and saying, go to sleep, rest now. Rest now. It's like Abraham's dream back in Genesis 15. He made Abraham weary and he put him to sleep and he dreamed this dream about 400 years of oppression in a foreign nation by a foreign people, a deployment. And the deployment dream of Abraham now, he says, okay, people, you're in Egypt now. You're in the Western culture. This picture is being drawn for you about the great deployment. Go to sleep. Let me take care of what's going to take place next. So what's going to take place? 5 years of famine will be over. And then what? Why don't we just go home? Why are we staying in Egypt 6 years, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14, 15, 16. Why are we still here after the famine ended 5 years ago? Why are we there for 17 years before we hear the next word mentioned by the Holy One? Because he said, go to sleep, and we wake up, and we've been here 17 years. And what's next? And then we start having conversations. The writer of Torah, the storyteller, tells us these conversations take place. One between Yaakov and Yosef about where Yaakov wants to be buried or not buried. He says, do not honor, pledge me this, swear to me this, that you will not bury me in this land of deployment down here, in this land of perversion, in this land of corruption, in this land of Rosh Hashanah and Hamas, Evelet, Hevel, and Avon, in this land of Tumah, in this land of Chol, in this land of Toebah. Don't bury me here. I don't belong here. I need you to take me back to the land of my father. Is this the conversation we really should be having about where Yaakov is buried? It's not something saying to you, but why are any of us still here 17 years into this quiet, sleepy captivity? And then we're going to see later that as Yaakov prepares to actually die, he calls his sons around him to testify over them. And out of the same mouth proceeds both blessing and cursing. Major and wonderful blessings, both for the sons and for the nation of Israel as a whole, is going to come forth from them, and for the world, but also out of the same mouth will proceed. Is this the conversation we should be having? Something should be said. Something's not right here. What happened to us during these 17 years that we have been in Mitzrayim? What happened to the great plan of the deployment? What happened to wise as serpents, harmless as doves, sheep among wolves? Why are we still here? Why are we still thinking like Egyptians? Why are we still under the constriction and the forcing and the propaganda and the manipulation of the Egyptian people? Why are we even here having this conversation? Why out of our mouths is cursing proceeding as well as blessing? And we're going to see in this parsha two very high-profile funerals. Yaakov will die and be buried, and there will be a great pomp and circumstance, and Egypt will go with us and escort us as the sons and daughters of the covenant, the 70, to all the way back to Hebron, back to the cave of Machpelah. They will bury Yaakov there and make us come back home. We will voluntarily, it seems, without putting up a fight, we come back home, back to what they call home, to Egypt. Why? Why didn't we stay when we had the chance? Two very high-profile. The second high-profile funeral will be that of Yosef, and there will be something strange about the funeral of Yosef. Yosef will not be buried. Yosef will be laid in a box above the earth in Egypt, testifying to the world, I do not belong here, and you do not belong here. Carry me up from here whenever we leave, whenever you leave. So we're going to be introduced in the book of Genesis in the last few chapters to the dry bones imagery. These bones can live. Yes, these bones can live. It will take the breath of the Spirit and the visitation of the Creator of the universe for that to happen. And with that, we'll see that the patriarchal era will come to an end. The patriarchal era will end. We will end asleep in Egypt, and we will awaken in time to build the great nation, or actually for the Creator of the universe to build a great nation. And all these stories, the storyteller of Torah has been giving us, the stories of Abraham and of Yitzhak and of Yaakov and of Yosef, will give way to stories, new stories. Stories about a new Pharaoh who knows not Yosef. Stories about Moshe and Miriam and Aaron of the Leviim tribe, of the families of the Levites. and also about Yehoshua of the family of the Ephraimites, and Bezalel, the forerunner of the tribe of Yehuda. We will read more stories. The stories are not going to end. They'll just change their focus and get a grander scope, building on the foundation. And now the final parsha of Genesis, parsha 12, Vayechi, building upon the foundations of the patriarchs, but bidding farewell to the patriarchal era, saying hello to the season of being forged into and divinely appointed as a great nation. Let's do our call to worship. I'll sing it in Hebrew. Join me. Let the Hebrew words be reintroduced to the atmosphere of the earth, the airwaves of the earth. Sing with me as many as you can, as many as you know it. And those who don't know it, just relax and listen. Let the sound reverberate in your ears. This is the blessing we speak before reading from the Torah. Baruch hu et Adonai Hamvorach. Baruch Adonai Hamvorach Leolam Vaed. Baruch Ata Adonai Eloheinu Melech HaOlam Asher Bachar Banu Mikol Ha'amin V'natan Lanu Et Torato. Baruch Ata Adonai Noten HaTorah. Amen, amen, amen. And now may you open our eyes, O Holy One, that we may see wondrous things in your Torah. For we are just strangers in the earth. So please do not hide your commandments, your instructions for living from us. So now gather round, children of the Most High, because it's story time again. The closing lines of Parsha Vayigash were Vayashev Yisrael be'eretz Mitzrayim be'eretz Goshen, and so Israel dwelt, sat, straddled in the land of Egypt, in the country of Goshen. Vayesku Vayifru, and he took root there, and he was fruitful there. Hirbu meod, and he spread abroad and increased and expanded exceedingly. That's how we ended Parsha Vayigash. Ready or not, Egypt, here we are. Wise as serpents, harmless as doves, sheep among wolves. Let's see how it all plays out. Opening lines of Parsha Vayechi. Vayechi Yaakov be'eretz Mizraim, and thus Yaakov lived in the land of Egypt. Sheva Esrei Shana, 17 years. Vayehi Yamei Yaakov, and these the days of Yaakov's life. Shanei Hayim Umeot Shana, they were 147 years. Fast forward, rewind, I should say, rewind back 147 years. Rivka is pregnant. She's got twins. She's in great agony. Why am I like this? Why is it like this with me? 147 years have passed since that time. Oh, what has happened in those 147 years? And the last 17 of those 147 years were spent asleep, as it were, in Egypt. Let's go on. And when the time drew near for Israel to die, and he called to his son Yosef, and he said to him, and see, now, if I have found favor, grace in your sight, simna yadka takat yareki, please place your hand under my thigh and my tender areas, and va'asot imari chesed ve'emet, and do me this kindness, make this kindness for me in truth. Al na ta'tik beineni be'mitzrayim, don't bury me in Egypt. Shakavti im avoti, but let me lie in state with my fathers, my patriarchs. Satani mi Mitzrayim, and carry me out of Egypt. Ukvartindan Tani Bir to Atam, and bury me in their tomb. Vayomer Anoki El Eset Kid Varek, and he said, I will do according to your word. Vayomer Hishavali, and he said, swear to me. Vayishavalo, and he swore to him. Vayishaktaku Israel El Rosh Hamital, and so Israel bowed himself, lowered himself at the head of his bed. Parsha number 12. Vayaki. His key factors, there's actually two key verses in this parsha, and without getting into great detail, which I'll leave that to your individual studies that you do, or your group Torah study that you're going to do in a few moments, or sometime today. There are two key verses, and one of them is found in Genesis 47:21. And that is when Yaakov is speaking to Joseph. He just adopted Joseph's sons, Menashe and Ephraim. These sons of a foreign woman, Asenat, the priestess of On, have come in, and now they're going to be accepted and brought into the covenant, and they're brought into the covenant people as equal tribes members. This engrafting of foreigners into the nations has come. He has done this, and so after he does this, he turns to Joseph and he says, Hine, behold, Anochi met. I am going to die. I am dying. V'haya Elohim imachem, but he will be with you all. And talking to Joseph and to the sons that he just adopted, Manasseh and Ephraim, and to the whole entire group of the Hebrew people, the 70 they deployed. V'haya Elohim imachem, he will be with you. The Holy One will be with you all. V'hashiv etchem el haaretz avoteka, and he will return you all to the land of your fathers. This is the promise that's been made. The second key verse is later found from Joseph's mouth. He says, I'm going to die as well, but the Holy One will surely visit you, and he will bring you up from this land. Carry my bones with you when you go. These are the stories that are going to be the key factors of our time in deployment in Egypt. Vayaki means to live, especially to live in a flow of divine breath, divine spiritual infusion, divine renewal, resurrection energy from heaven, kedusha, flowing, living in a. So when we say l'chaim, we don't mean just I hope you don't die. L'chaim means I hope you live your life to the fullest. Messiah Yeshua, blessed be his holy name, would say, I come to give you life and life abundantly. The hayah, I come to give you the full hayah, especially living in the flow of divine breath and inspiration. So the Parsha is going to be about the cross-generational differences, the cross-generational life force, I should say, the cross-generational life force that differentiates us from the world, the cross-generational life force that we have, this breath, this hayah, life that we get from the Holy One through the covenant and through his words that we carry around with us, and this is our torch that we carry in our deployment. This Parsha is about the cross-generational life force of Israel, which some call it a divine spark that is activated within the seed of Avram whenever the voice of the Holy One speaks, whenever his words of Torah are read, whenever he moves upon the face of the earth like he did to the brood over the face of the deep in the days of creation. Whenever the Creator awakens us, the divine spark, that is this cross-generational life force within us, the Hayah, awakens. In Star Wars saga, this is spoken somewhat facetiously as the Force. Torah speaks of it as Hayah. May the Hayah be with you. In Star Wars parlance, the Force is like a mysterious energy field or something created by life that binds the galaxy together. That's sort of the Force concept. It's a fiction based upon a reality, which is the spiritual reality of the Kaya. The Force is such that in the Star Wars saga that the harnessing of the Force's power gives the Jedi, it gives the Jedi and others sensitive to this spiritual energy extraordinary abilities. There are certain transcendent qualities that comes with the Force, or more reality comes with the Hayah of the Holy One. And the things that the Force gives, everything on being able to see things before they happen, predict the future, understand trends, and see the times and the seasons. Also, the Force can can give the users powerful abilities to transcend, to overcome obstacles, and direct their actions. And it also seems to have a will of its own. This is in Star Wars parlance, and we're using it merely as a model or an example of what the Hayah of the Holy One does. The Hayah can grant abilities to overcome great trials and tribulations, and also can direct our actions through the deployments that we're given. And it has a will of its own. It moves, it motivates according to a will, not according to hope or chance or possibilities or luck. It doesn't come through the stars aligning. It comes through the Holy One's will being done. Now may the Hayah of the Holy One be with you, beloved, as you enter the season of Vayachi, the season of deployment in the Western cultural world, or in the East, as it may be. The season of Vayachi is upon us. The time is short. The days are evil, and we are a vulnerable, suspect minority, and that's the way it's supposed to be. We live in the midst of a shallow, materialistic, narcissistic, sexuality-obsessed, sensual pleasure addicted, pseudo-intelligence spewing, ethnic arrogance exuding, knee-jerk reacting, outraged about everything, lawless, loveless, godless, and blatantly self-righteous pagan world. This is our deployment. Welcome to Egypt. Welcome to Mitzrayim. Welcome to our time. The Parsha is about what do we do? How do we act wise as serpents, harmless as doves, and as sheep among wolves? And how do we pass this ability on to the generations that come after us? We begin to look through Parsha Vayachi at cross-generational focus, our lives in the covenant. It's not just to think about our own life and what we're going to do. It's about laying the foundations for our children and our children's children to do the same, and actually to go far beyond where we are and leave ourselves open for the great breath of the Holy One to awaken the Hayah force within us. So this parsha contains conversations and transactions that are designed strategically to leave behind a blessing for the rapidly changing times in which our descendants will live. This parsha is about sowing into the next generation and the future of the earth and the ecosystem by leaving an inspiring, empowering legacy to the world. We must teach and impress upon our children's and our children's hearts the identity-affirming narratives of the story. The hidden wisdom, the secret wisdom encoded within Torah's timeless stories. We must remember the stories and retell the stories and get our children and children's children to understand this is their story as well. We must also understand the defining promises, the destiny-defining promises of the Torah, the promise of Mashiach coming, the promise of the seed of Hava, the seed of Eve, the seed of Abraham, of Adam, the seed coming forth and being able to displace the darkness, the seeds of the darkness. Come with this destiny-defining promises of the Torah, the counterbalancing elements of our mission. We need to have our children understand, our children's children understand the challenges and the obstacles and the enemies that Torah warns us that we will all face in all generations. You need to know who your enemy is and not cuddle up to Pharaoh and not cuddle up to the kings of the East and not cuddle up to the nations and the pagans and the religions and not cuddle up to the governments and not cuddle up to the science world and the educational world and the entertainment world, not cuddle up to these things because these have the death breath, the breath of death in them, not the force of life. And the fourth thing we must impress upon our children, our children's children in their hearts as we prepare for cross-generational impact is that the Torah provides the essential disciplines, the rules of engagement that help us to succeed in our mission and our task. You see, Bnei Israel on deployment, the 70 people, the 12 families, are under a mandate. You and I are under this mandate. We've been engrafted like, some of us have been engrafted like Manasseh and Ephraim into the family, into these 12 families. We are under a mandate to communicate, to instill, to awaken and nurture our children and our grandchildren's covenant identities their callings, especially in relation to the grand plan of redemption and restoration, their collective mission objectives, their collective synergy strategies, how we encourage and inspire one another, how we connect to the power sources that Creator has placed, the Kedusha energy places that He's put, the portals of Kedusha like Mesaba, and the Moedim, the festivals, and Jerusalem, and the land of Israel in general, and the people of Israel in general, and the things of the tabernacle vision and model are in general. And also we have to awaken and instill and nurture in our children their collective destiny. See, the mandate that we're given as sons and daughters of the covenant comes with accountability, and it's regular accountability. The part of the Yom Kippur strategy of the Holy One is to help us to recite our death, rehearse our death, and realize that we are accountable to Him in every year that we live, every time we draw a breath. So our challenge in this season of deployment is going to be to stay on course, on point, on mission, according to the deployment strategy, according to the rules of engagement. To stay wise as serpent, harmless as doves, even when we're in the midst of wolves and we're just sheep. We have no power to control the wolf population. And not to get distracted or discouraged or intimidated or paralyzed with fear in relation to doing tov, the things of goodness, the things of hope and life that we're told to give, to bring to the earth. But instead to always sow seed that is good, that is tov, that is part of what the key ecosystem needs to grow and to expand and to prosper. To sow good seed of Hayah, seed of divine direction, full of the Hayah life force of God into the next generation, into the next year, into the next crop, and into the next conversation, into the next interaction, and the next transaction that we have with other people. And thus to leave the world, this is our challenge, to leave the world, including this pagan land of exile, and Rosh Hashanah Hamas, in which we're deployed, a better place than it was when we got here, and in a better position to flourish than we found it in when we got here. The sooner we start focusing on these things, beloved, the better. Now's the time for us and for our bloodlines and for our communities and for every one of our lives and all of our progeny and every one of those facets of life affect. We have to take care to leave something behind, even in our times of deployment and quiet, that will nurture the soil where we are and out of which the next generation will grow. Vayaki contains essential strategies for life and living Hayah in the days to come, in the end of days. We can prepare for the end of days. Don't do it in fear. Don't do it in anxiety. Don't do it in bitterness. Don't do it in a sense of isolation. We're deployed. Prepare with Hayah. You can cope. You can survive. You can even flourish in these times. But you must stay in the will of the Holy One. Vayaki, Parsha teaches 5 necessary disciplines of tikkun, of fixing people, land, areas, nations, and the world. One is maintaining mission focus. I've said it before, and I'll say it again over and over again. Maintain your... Why are you here? Do you know why you're here on earth at such a time as this? Do you understand the calling of the covenant? Do you understand the purpose of the Creator and why He has assigned you in this particular place at this particular time? Maintain mission focus. And beyond the veil vision, you are connected to another realm, a realm that goes far beyond the powers of the rulers of this world or the principalities of this world. We are connected to the Creator of the universe Himself, living in the heavenly realm. And the second thing Vayaki teaches is that we are to cultivate and flow in passion to be a blessing, not to mix our blessing with curses, not to mix our blessing with fear and depression and sarcasm and arrogance, not to mix our blessing with selfishness or self-righteousness, not to mix our blessing that we're giving in the earth, the blessing of shalom, not to mix that with the blessing of anxiety and worry and fret and fear. Third thing we can learn from Parsha Vayaki is that our calling, our deployment, is to have a good eye about life experiences, to see things through the eyes of the higher realm, through the eyes of the Creator himself. Why is he doing this? Like Joseph got a good eye about why he was sold into slavery in Egypt, and why he went through the prison times, and why he was persecuted for so long. Why he was brought to the position of the leadership of Israel, of Egypt, I should say. Having a good eye about our life experiences instead of bitterness and anger and trauma, post-traumatic response. The fourth thing we should learn from Parsha Vayaki is that we are to leave a legacy and talk about our legacy and a strong foundation and make it an initiative and an important factor for us is what we leave behind, not what we take with us, not our bucket list of what we get before we die, but our bucket list of what we give whenever we pass on to the next realm. Fifth thing that we should learn from Parsha Vayaki, my beloved friends, is that we are to inspire others with the hope of messianic redemption. Mashiach is coming. Mashiach is the Redeemer and the Restorer. Mashiach is the hope of the world. Mashiach is our message. Well, let's talk just for a minute before we go about what this is all about. What happens? Yaakov is going to prosper greatly under Joseph's protection for 17 years. The last 17 years of his life will be spent in the Goshen region of Egypt. His health will begin to fail. As it does so, he's going to ask Joseph, he's going to ask Joseph not to bury him in Egypt, but to take him back to the land of the patriarchs, have his body back in the land of buried at Mount Pelah. Yaakov is then going to bless Joseph and his sons beautifully. He's going to take Manasseh and Ephraim, his own grandsons, as his sons. He's going to adopt these boys so as to elevate these sons of Asenat, the priestess of On, of Egypt, this foreigner, to equal status with his own offspring. This calling of other peoples, other flocks will come in. Yes, they will. The whole idea, we're going to see it again with Ruth in the days of Naomi, in the days of the book of Ruth. We'll see it with Rahab in the days of the book of Joshua. There will be those who are brought into equal status with the Holy One's own, with Yaakov's own offspring. And they will become part of the great Goy Gadol, the great nation. And then we're going to see Yaakov bless his own sons and the nascent tribes that are going to descend from those sons. He's going to bless them one by one. And then we'll see at the age of 147 years, Yaakov will die. We'll see a procession consisting of Yaakov's grieving family and the Egyptian dignitaries and Egyptian cavalry and chariots deliver Yaakov's body all the way from Egypt to Hebron for burial. And we'll see that weeping take place. And we'll see that Joseph, too, over the course of years, is going to instruct that his bones be taken out of Egypt as well, that he be buried in the Holy Land, but the people will not have the power to do it at that time. So his bones will lie in a box, unburied, testifying that these bones can live. Before his passing, Joseph will prophesy to his brothers and to the families of the deployment and to us. God will surely visit you. Yes, he will. And he will bring you up out of this land of your deployment, to the land which he swore to you to give to Avram, to Yitzhak, and to Yaakov. And Joseph will then die at the age of 110 years. He will be embalmed and placed in a box in Egypt, and thus will end the book of Genesis. Thus will end Parsha Vayaki. Thus will end the era of the patriarchs, and thus will begin the formation of a great nation, which we will read about beginning next week. And now we have a custom at the end of the readings of every book of the Torah. When we come to the end of the book, we say a phrase that encourages and inspires one another to join as we go forward in the next book, to take the lessons we've learned from the previous book and carry them forward into the next series of studies. And the words are Hazak, Hazak, V'nit Kazek. Be strengthened, and may we all be strengthened together. So, join with me as we say it. Hazak, Hazak, V'nit Kazek. Shabbat Shalom, beloved. See you next week, the Holy One willing, to discuss beginnings of Parsha, Shemot, and the book of Exodus. Bye for now.